Hello everybody, Mac here. Welcome back to the show. First of all, let me get this out of the way. Yes, I know on the last video my color balance was a little all over the place and the sound towards the end, there was a little bit of a hang up in it. But like I said, it's a new background, it's a new setup. I'm working out the kinks. So, now that's out of the way, let's get on to all of this. What we have here is more McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse. This is the wave of the Dark Knight Returns. This does not include the 2-pack with the blue armored Batman and Superman and the Stand, but that is on its way. I do have that coming, but this is the main wave right here. All 4 figures with a collect-to-build horse. Interesting choice, but that's what we got. Now, for those of you that don't know, The Dark Knight Returns was Frank Miller's seminal masterpiece about Batman coming out of retirement. Bruce is a little over the hill, shouldn't really be in the game anymore, but he's addicted to it, he can't stop, and hence The Dark Knight Returns. These are 4 of the main players from that piece: Superman, Joker, Batman, and Robin. And if you take a look at Batman back here, as a matter of fact, let's bring him up front, you can probably see right off the bat that this was heavily an inspiration for Zack Snyder's version of Batman. Like, if you bring it up close, you can even see that the wrinkles that are in the suit were pre-made into Ben Affleck's suit for the Snyderverse movies. So that gives you some idea of the influence that The Dark Knight Returns had over Batman. It definitely heralded in the quote-unquote Dark Knight era of Batman, between something like that and Batman Year One, and then, of course, Batman 89. All of that helped shape Batman as we know him today. So, what we have here is McFarlane putting that out in plastic form, and we have oversized boxes because each of these has a piece or multiple pieces in it for the collect-to-build horse, and it is just the open window, the black black bordering it, open window up top to let light down through, open window on the side, Batman, DC Multiverse on this side, Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, and on the back we have pretty promotional shots of Batman on his horse. Instead of having individual shots, they are all Batman on his horse, even Joker back here. So, the back of the packaging is all the same, shows you how the horse goes together, has the other figures that are part of this line, and we got Joker, we got Robin, we got Supes, and we have... who is that? Oh. Yeah, and we have Batman himself. Sorry. Okay, so that's what we have for the packaging. So, without further ado, let's just open these up and let's get to them quickly, because this is going to be a long video since we're doing the whole wave right off the bat. No pun intended. And we are going to start with Superman, and the reason we're going to start with Superman is because I feel like he's the least interesting of the collection. And I don't mean he's boring, but to me he's just the least interesting figure, because Superman in his classic form is pretty much Superman in his classic form. So let's get Cal open. Okay, getting him out of the box and putting the tape measure to him, we can see that Clark stands roughly 7.5 inches to the top of his coif. Okay, taking a look at the articulation, we're going to start at the top. We're going to work our way down as we always do, that we can see that the head gets some pretty good tilt from side to side. It does a full 360 spin. He can look up fairly well, which is good for a flying character. He can look down, okay. His arms will do a complete 360 spin. They come up a little bit past 90 on their own. They have a butterfly joint in there. Interestingly enough, that McFarlane Toys chose to give this version of Superman a single-jointed elbow, and there's no bicep swivel. There's nothing cutting the sculpt right here. Instead, it's a hinge and swivel at the elbow. Okay? His wrists have McFarlane's swivel hinge swivel, that they will come up and down, but then you can turn them. You can do that. You can do that. And then they go in and out. Getting his arms out of the way, you can see that he has a cut right here in his abs, giving the impression that he has an ab crunch, but that is mostly for turning. He doesn't really come forward much at all, but you can see this big bulky back muscle here that he can crunch back a little. Well, he can crunch back a lot, actually, which once again is good for a flying pose. But you can also see that it sort of loses the sculpt a little bit. You can see that line right there, but that's really not, whoops, that's really not much to complain about. He also has a waist twist, and he gets a little bit of side to side. So whether it's at the ab or at the waist, he can do a full spin right there, getting multiple points of turning. He can't really go forward like most of the McFarlane figures unless you just bend him forward at his hips, which brings us down to his legs, that his legs will come out, almost to 90. They go forward. They go back. They have the swivel at the hip in there. That on Clark here, it's actually not too bad. It comes in fairly well, goes out, not really a whole lot. He has double jointed knees that don't really go much further than that, just because of how beefy Clark's legs are right here. Once again, no thigh cut, no boot cut, but his ankles will rock side to side. They'll pivot back, they'll pivot forward, and he has toe articulation. Looking at the sculpt of these figures, the first thing you're going to notice is that these are very chunky figures. These are very much done in a stylized version of Frank Miller's art. I mean, this is what the book was. Everybody had these larger-than-life, over-exaggerated bodies and muscles and features. Even more lithe characters like Joker that are typically more slim, and you'll see that once we get to the figure, had very broad shoulders and was very overly designed. The only one that doesn't fall into this style is really Robin, and we'll see that when we get to her. But you can see even the S on Superman's chest I always felt was a little bit larger than life, really drew your eye to it. It worked for the book, it really did. It's not something that I would recommend putting in like the regular comics because it's a little too hyper bulky, I guess. I don't know. But for The Dark Knight Returns, it definitely worked. You can even see in the face. This was very much a tell of Miller's style for The Dark Knight Returns. Especially the men had these big blocky faces with these strong lantern jaws. Very much kind of like a throwback to, I guess, maybe the golden age of when heroes were drawn and they were larger than life, especially in DC. The only issue I have with the sculpting on this is that, like with Red Hood, you can see the trenching in the shoulders. I really wish McFarlane Toys would find a way to not do that. I'm not a fan of that. Like, they use these hinge joints right here, but like if they put a ball joint in there or something, I feel like they could not have to do that. But I do like the overall look of the figure. It has this unique style, this shine to the blue. It's very brightly colored. I hope it's coming across that way on camera, that these are very bright colors. Like, this is very much a classic look for Superman. The only thing he doesn't have is the S on the cape, and I think that's also true in the comic, that he just had this red cape. The only thing I'm not a fan of is the way that this cape is laid. How it's like folds over folds over folds, and it's kind of short on him. I don't know. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read The Dark Knight Returns, but I don't remember the cape being quite this busy. I thought it was more, honestly, I thought it was more flat, just a red panel that, I don't know. The cape I might have to do something with. You can see it's glued into him in the back here. I'm going to see if maybe I can find a cloth cape to replace this, something with a wire in it. The cape I'm just not a fan of. Normally, like, hard plastic capes don't bother me, but this look, it just doesn't work. But not the only good thing, but the good thing about it is that it's the back, so you're really not going to see it. But even still, it seems awfully short for him. You got his classic boots right here. I love these big red boots. These are fantastic. The whole look of him looks great, right down to his trunks. And the trunks are a very soft rubber, like we've been seeing lately with a lot of the McFarlane figures, so that whenever you move his legs, it gets out of the way and it doesn't hinder the articulation. The only thing you have to watch is if you bring it back all the way, and of course now it's not going to do that, but if you bring it back, you might get the rubber caught in the leg. Of course, it's not going to do it now. But it did it, I swear, when I was playing around with him there like that the rubber got caught in the leg. And it is a very thin rubber, so you want to be careful with that so that it doesn't rip. Straight out of the box, Clark comes with a pair of clenched fists for punching his foes into submission. And he also comes with a pair of these open hands, and that's really it for the hands that he comes with. I wish instead of these, he would have come with some flat hands, so you could get like that classic hand forward flying pose out of him, because he is very much a classic look for Superman. He was very much purposely based on the original look for the character. One more hand set would have been nice, or gotten rid of these and just had the fists and the flat hands. Like all McFarlane DC Multiverse figures, Clark here, Superman, comes with a trading card. That we have a nice promotional picture of the figure on the card. And then on back, we have a bio, and this one pertains specifically to his role in The Dark Knight Returns. So go ahead, pause, read that if you'd like. And of course, he comes with his figure stand with the DC logo tamped on it. Interestingly enough, this version of Superman comes with a stand, a regular stand, and not a flight stand. I kind of understand why, though. There was a lot already being packaged in there, but it would have been nice to have a flight stand to go along with this version of Superman. Clark doesn't come with any accessories, but he does come with the hind legs of the collect-to-build horse. Okay, let's jump to Batman next. And yes, I know it seems strange that I'm getting the two mains out of the way first. All right, here we go. Batman, the Dark Knight himself, out of his packaging, and we're going to put the tape measure to him, and we're going to see that he comes up to the top of his head. It's not even worth talking about his ears, because his ears are just nubs, but to the very top of his head, he is just barely 7 inches tall, which is interesting to me, because that means not only is he shorter than Superman in this wave, he's shorter than a lot of other DC Multiverse figures. Okay, we're going to be looking at articulation, and we'll talk about this when we get to the sculpt. But the head does do a full 360. There's not as much tilt as there was to Superman, but there's still some decent amount of tilt. His head can look up a little bit. His head can look down. His arms come up past 90, higher than Clark's did. They do a full 360, and he has that butterfly joint in the shoulder. Just like Superman, he has a single hinged elbow that comes up past 90, and it is a hinge and swivel elbow. His hands, just like all the McFarlane figures, have that swivel hinge swivel, that they go up and down. You turn, you do that, they go in and out. But look at this. This is his right hand, and this is really, really loose. There you go. See that? Like, it's barely attached to the peg. So I'm going to have to either put some putty in there or put something around that. I don't know how it deals with the other hands yet. Like Clark, like Superman, he has this ab cut right here, but there is no crunch to that at all. Nothing back, nothing forward. That's mostly for turning, but he also turns at the waist, and he doesn't really have any side to side. If you want him to pitch forward or backwards, you have to go at the hips. Now we come down to the legs. The legs come out, not great, especially for Batman. They go forward. They go forward. They go back. Now, here's something that I discovered, that I had to double check and make sure it wasn't broken. He has a thigh cut. Batman has a thigh cut right there, but he also still has that swivel at the hip. And what's odd is his swivel at the hip is probably one of the best I've seen in the multiverse line, not just for this wave. So he has the best hip swivel that I've seen, but he also has a thigh cut. That's a little odd, and it's going to be, I can picture it being a little annoying when you have two swivel points that close to each other. He has double jointed knees, but just like Superman, his legs, his sculpt is so chunky that they only go up just past 90. Now, despite having the thigh cut, there is no boot cut. At least I don't think there is. Nope. Ankles go, whoop, whoop, whoop. Ankles go back, ankles go forward, forward facing pin for rocker, and toe articulation. Now, if we're going to be talking about the sculpt, we got to talk about the head portrait, the face portrait, and the head sculpt first. First of all, where's his neck? Like, I know Batman, especially in this suit, was very stocky, but it just looks like he's totally missing a neck. Second, I get that you want Batman to be a little bit expressive, especially in this incarnation, because everything is hidden except for this part of his face. But is that really the expression you always want him to have? I don't know. I think they could have picked something a little bit better than that. Also, this is not a fault of the figure. This was Frank Miller's artwork, was the stubs of the ears. But now that we have him out and we have him close up, and like you can see what I mean with like the molded in crinkles in the uniform, the big chunky pouches for the belt, the boots, the coloring, everything, you can definitely see that Snyder pulled from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns a lot for his rendition of Batman. And now, first of all, let me get this out there. I've read The Dark Knight Returns. I like The Dark Knight Returns. I am not commenting on the Snyder movies. I'm just saying you can definitely see that Zack pulled a lot from Frank Miller's adaptation. And then on the back, his cape is just as layered as Superman's is. But for some reason, it doesn't bother me with Batman. And I think it's because with Superman, it tends to be just like a regular cape, that it just hangs back off the shoulders. With the way that Batman's is folded back, it's like he has that big billowing cape that if he wanted to, he could pull it forward over his shoulders and just like shroud himself in it. But these are those extra pieces of material that are just laying back across his back. So his arms, honestly, well, first of all, he does have that trenching up here in his shoulders as well. And the cape kind of hides it, but not as much as I'd like it to. I still think they just need to put ball joints in those elbows. And not having an ab crunch, that you have it there. Why can't they move? But this really annoys me. Just this spinner of a hand going on over here. Still amazes me with that. As you've probably seen plenty of, Batman comes with these two gripping hands right out of the box. And he also comes with these two clenched fists. And this fist doesn't spin nearly as loose as the hand does, so it's obviously just a problem with the hand. I'll probably be able to fill it with something to make it a tighter fit on that peg. Batman only comes with one accessory, and that is this rope with the Batarang attached to it. Now, something you have to remember if you're not familiar with the time period that this novel, this trade paperback, this series came out in, Batman didn't really have the grapple guns until Batman 89. Up until then, it was just a Batarang attached to a rope. It was more of a grappling hook than a grappling gun. And this is very much reminiscent of that. He would hold the rope on one hand, and he would swing it and toss it with the other hand. In some ways, I kind of wish they would go back to this. I like this old school version of it. Maybe not all the time, but there are some stories where I really like it. Like in the animated movie adaptation of Gotham by Gaslight, I was kind of bummed that he had a grapple gun and he didn't just have something like this. Of course, Bruce comes with his figure stand with the DC logo tamped on it, like all the McFarlane figures do. And we have this trading card with the promotional shot of the figure on the card, and then we have his bio on back. And go ahead and pause that, but the interesting thing about this is basically just a generic Batman profile. It doesn't say anything about The Dark Knight Returns until it says, now, after 10 years in retirement, Batman returns. And for your collect-to-build pieces, Batman comes with the front two legs of the horse and this really big bushy tail. And this is a very solid piece. I have a feeling that the way it's going to be put in, you're going to be able to use this as sort of like a third leg or a kickstand to get those rearing poses out of him. Okay, next up we have Joker. Okay, here's Joker out of the packaging. Let's put the tape measure to him. And going to the top of his head, we can see that Joker is... Joker is about 7 1/8 inch tall, which means that he's actually taller than the Dark Knight. So we'll see how that looks in a second. All right, looking at the articulation, Joker is honestly one of the more confounding ones so far. He has pretty much no tilt, and the tilt that you can get out of him, you really got to strain. His head will do a full 360. Whoa, I almost pulled his hairpiece off. He can look up. He can kind of look down. His head joint, his neck joint, look at that. His hair is coming off already. His head joint is really stiff. Ugh. Everything on him, see that? Everything on him is so stiff. And maybe it's just mine, but his arms will come up past 90. He can do a full 360, no butterfly joint. He has double jointed elbows with some decent travel to them. The swivel hinge swivel of the wrists, he can do that, and he can do that, and then he can do that, so they can go up and down or in and out. Normally with something like this is a very soft, pliable coat, and usually with something like this, like what we've seen in The Witcher, I expected this to be hollow, and there to be like a skeleton or a frame inside, but there's nothing. He can twist at the waist. He can go side to side. It feels like there's a ball joint at the waist a little bit, but no ab crunch or anything. He can kind of crunch back. He can crunch forward, and as you saw, side to side and twist. Legs will come up to the side. They have that twist at the hip. Legs will go forward. Legs will go back. Single jointed knee that, listen, some really tight detents. It can get up past 90. And the ankles will kind of rock back. They'll kind of rock forward. They have a side-to-side twist and toe articulation. Interestingly enough, though, there are no detents in these ankles. These are just freely floating. And that's not necessarily good because Joker is very top-heavy, because just like Batman and Superman, he's very broad, very chunky in the shoulders. You can even see the thickness to his torso right here. So when I was first trying to stand him up, sometimes he has a habit of rocking forward or falling back on his ankles because there's no detents. They're just smooth ball joints. And there we go. Now bringing him back forward and looking at the sculpt, I know I had issue with Batman's perpetual grimace, growly, big-lipped face. But with Joker trapped in this perpetual laugh, I mean, it's Joker. I don't really mind. One of the things I found really interesting about this version of Joker, Frank Miller's version of Joker, was that this is the first time in the comics I can remember that the lips were actually lipstick. It wasn't part of the chemical reaction. His skin was bleached white and his hair was dyed green. But I believe that was the first time in comics that the red lips were actually lipstick. I thought that was interesting in the comic. And you kind of get that impression with this too, how it's just very neatly follows the lip line on there. I really dig that. I like the detail in the character, in the eyes, the hair when I'm not ripping it off. It has a very nice shade of green to it and a nice wash to it to make the strands stand out. And then when we get down to the coat, we have this perpetual tie in the wind look that it's all right. I think it's an odd choice, but it's all right. It doesn't detract too much from me. I really like the texturing in the coat, the purple of the shirt. You can even see the shirt cuffs coming out past the coat cuffs. I really dig that. And how it cinches in at the waist really gives him Joker, a character who's normally very thin and very lithe, really gives him a bulked up look that he could be a formidable opponent for the Bat in some fisticuffs. The legs are just cream colored slacks. Oop, get his hands out of the way. Cream colored slacks, very straight. I like how you have the seam running down the front here. I really like that. It makes it look very neat, very tailored. And then we come down to his shoes with a little bit of a heel, which was an interesting choice for him, especially back in, I think it was the 80s. And this is like this and the shirt, the only two colors of purple, but they tie together because of how it all just goes together. I really liked this version of Joker because this was a different look for the Joker. This was a different take on the Joker, a very different combination of colors for the Joker, especially with all of this white. But you could still look at it and it was inherently Joker. Like, he didn't have the trench coat. He wasn't all in purple. He didn't have the big red bow tie. But you still looked at this and thought, yeah, that's the Joker. Now on Joker, if you move the coat back a little, or better yet, if you roll it down here, you can see that the arms are designed the same way, that they have that trenching. And when you put his arms up, you can see that on the underside, but that doesn't really matter. But I do like how they were able to use the cuffs of the jacket or the sleeves, the shoulders of the jacket to hide the trenching for the arms. If only they could have done that with some of the other figures. For an accessory, Joker comes with this knife that it serves its purpose, it looks good, but here's the problem. Most McFarlane weapons I talk about, they have a very flimsy blade, and so does this one. But it's not just the blade. The handle is very gummy and very rubbery too. And that makes it difficult because he has this one gripping hand, which is actually a trigger finger, and we'll take a look at that in a second. But it's very tight, and it's very difficult, and there's no give to these fingers. These are solidly molded fingers, but there's no give to it. So every time you try to push it in, the hands don't want to give, and the handle of the knife keeps bending. So, like, I get it in there eventually. I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now on camera, but it is rather difficult to get it in his hand in a decent way so that he can hold it. Because this just keeps wanting to compress and twist. Now, looking at the hand, like I said, he has this trigger hand, but because of Warner Brothers' mandate, you can't give him a gun. But if you do happen to have something laying around that could be sized right for him, you can put it in, and you can twist, and it doesn't look too bad. It's not necessarily meant for 7-inch figures. That's from the Fortnite series, but there's ways around it, Warner Brothers. Don't think we don't know. As you saw out of the box, Joker comes with a gripping hand and a clenched fist. And then the only other hand he comes with is really this evil power grasp hand, like mwahahaha. Now, something about the hands. This one right here on The Dark Knight on Batman, you saw that this hand spun around very easily. But this one, the hinge joint is so loose that even if I did put a gun in his hand, I'm not entirely sure he would be able to hold it up for any extended period of time. And it is a little loose on the swivel, but not like how Batman's was. Like all McFarlane DC Multiverse figures, Joker comes with a single peg stand with the DC logo tampoed on the front. And of course he comes with his trading card with a decent photo of the figure with Batman coming in on the side. I really like the ha 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 ha's up there in the moon. On the back we have his bio, so go ahead and give that a pause if you want to read that. And for the pieces for the Collect to Build a Horse, we have the horse's head and the saddle going along with him. This is a pretty chunky saddle. I kind of like the detail work. I just noticed that there's a bat etched in the saddle too. That's cool for the toy. Doesn't really work for the narrative because I think in the comic he just grabbed a police horse and went. But that's actually kind of cool. I like the detail in the saddle with the texturing, the silver stirrups. They even did silver buckling on there, and then the saddle blanket underneath. I think that's pretty decent. Oh, look at the texturing behind it too. I think that's pretty decent work on the saddle, if I do say so. And then with the horse's head, We have that same texturing and that same silver highlight and that silver piping for the bit and bridle. That, oh, these move independently of each other. That's cool. And I was going to wait and do size comparisons at the end of the video, but I wanted to get this out of the way now. See what I mean? If you look at the two of these together, Joker's taller than Bruce. And I honestly don't remember in the series if this is how Miller had portrayed them, that Joker was taller than Batman. But I don't think he was. And I don't know. He's just so squat and has such a short stature. I don't know. I think this is off on the scaling. And finally, that brings us to the girl wonder herself, Carrie Kelly, Robin. And I have to admit, this is the one that I have been most excited about because I'm pretty sure that this is the only time we're going to get the original Robin costume at this scale for the DC Multiverse. So, let's get her open and let's take a look. Okay, here she is, Carrie, Robin, out of the box, and we're going to put the tape measure to her. And putting the tape measure down, she is coming up shorter than the other ones, quite obviously. To the top of her head, she comes in at approximately 5¼ inches tall. To the top of her big pompadour hairstyle, she's at 5½ inches tall. And now that I look at the size of her, and what I said at the beginning, that I was excited because this is probably the only version of Robin in this costume that we're going to get at this scale, now it has me wondering how the 5-inch retro Batman 66 figure that McFarlane Toys makes would fit compared to the 7-inch line. Would be a little shorter than this, but you could also play it off that it's a younger Robin, like when he first joined Batman. I might have to look into that. That might be something interesting. All right, taking a look at Robin, we're going to start at the top and we're going to work our way down looking at the articulation. And truthfully, she has some of the best articulation in the line. I wish the others were as flexible as she is. That you can see her head get some really good tilt side to side. I wish Joker's head would crank to the side like that. That would look real good for that psycho. Her head does a full 360. She can look up. She can look down. Arms come up way past 90. Do a full 360 spin. She does have a butterfly joint here in the shoulder. She has a bicep swivel that's cut into that sleeve right there. Real nice placement on it. She has double jointed elbows. And she has that swivel hinge swivel that the wrists will turn. And then they'll come... Whoops. Whoops. That was me, not the figure. I was a little too rough. They'll go up and down. And then you can do this, and then they go in and out. Now we get those out of the way. There's nothing in the ab crunch. Once again, like Joker, she's all solid in here, even though this tunic is a very soft rubber. But there's no ab crunch, but there is a ball joint at the waist that she can get some side to side. She can turn, and she can crunch forward a little bit, and she can crunch back a lot. Now the legs will come up almost completely to 90. She definitely wins it for the wave. Actually, that is pretty close to 90. They go forward. They go back. Double jointed knees. She does have, whoops, she has that thigh swivel in there. Let me pop that back on. But as you can see, there's not a whole lot of play. Like the leg will move, but you can see that when I tried to really crank it, it pops off the ball joint, that there's not a whole lot of play in there. Her ankles rock back. Her ankles rock way forward. Got some side-to-side action going on. And toe articulation right there. Now, her ankles rocking, like Joker, this is just a smooth motion. There's no detents in there. But because she's not nearly as top-heavy, even with this big plastic cape hanging off, she doesn't have nearly as much trouble finding a sweet spot to stay standing. See that? Now, if we bring her back up and we look at the sculpt and the paint app, I love this figure. Mainly because she has the most amount of color to her. She really stands out next to the other ones. Even against Superman, she definitely stands out because this is a very bright palette that she has going on. I love that they put actual translucent plastic in for the lenses of her glasses, and the glasses are sculpted on. You can't take them off, and I wouldn't want to because I feel like I'd lose those anyway. This hairstyle, which was ridiculous in the comics, it's even more ridiculous in action figure form, but it looks fantastic on her. With that swoosh going off to the side, going to the same direction of her cape, has a real nice wash in it to make the strands stand out, the part, everything about it looks great. The hair between her and Joker, fantastic hair jobs on these guys. Love even has the collar for the cape in there, the oversized R symbol, because remember, she made this at home. The idea for The Dark Knight Returns, when Carrie stepped up to be Robin, I believe was supposed to be that Jason was the last Robin, and he never took another Robin after that. This was before Tim Drake. So this whole costume was made on her own, probably bought some cosplay and then just added on like the R and all of the other things for herself. So the R is a little bit oversized. You can see how the clips on the front of the tunic kind of aren't lined up and they go around the R. I love the whole look of this thing. Even have a little bit of a shine to the green on her. The only thing I have as far as the sculpt goes so far, we'll look at the cape in a second, but the only problem I have, and I am going to sound really weird, this is going to sound totally unlike me, but I wish the elbows and the knees were single jointed. I wish the elbows and the knees were single joint hinge and swivel, because you got this trenching in her arms, and when you do the double elbows, it just looks ugly in there because it's skin. It's supposed to be her skin. And the same thing with the knees, that when you bend the knees, this just looks awful, kind of ugly. That I feel like whenever it's human tone, whenever it's human skin, you should go with single joints so you don't get this trenching in there. I feel the same way about my Wonder Woman 84 figure, to be completely honest. I don't think I said that in the review, but after I looked at it, I felt the same way, that like I would have rather Wonder Woman from Wonder Woman 84 had single jointed elbows on there. Now we turn around and we look at the cape, and the cape has that action that it's swooshing off to the side that he seems to do with a lot of capes instead of just letting them hang, which I'm not sure I have a problem with that, but this isn't so drastic that if you put her in a neutral position, it's going to look odd. Like if you just stand her there on the shelf in a neutral position, like it could just be, this is not so drastic that you couldn't believe that this is just the wind blowing the cape while she's standing there, especially since it's going sort of at the same angle of her hair. And when we look in here at the tunic, you can even see that there's molded wrinkles in the tunic, in the suit. The whole thing looks great. We even have a little bit back here, just above her belt, where they didn't have to put that. Like I said, this is probably the one that I'm the most excited about, and now I do want to get that Batman, that 5-inch Batman 66 Robin, and see how he would measure up now that I've taken a look at her. Now, for an accessory, we have her trademark slingshot, and I'm really happy that they included the slingshot because she uses that to great effect, actually, in The Dark Knight Returns. But it's not molded very well. First of all, much like the dagger, this whole thing is very rubbery, and the grip is a little too big for her hand. Also, if you look at where the leather part, the slingshot part is attached to like the fork, you can see how one is glued there and the other one is sort of glued to the inside, where like she's not going to be able to get like a pullback, a decent pullback shot because of how this is set in there. And also if you try and tension it up, the handle will bend back. So this is very rubbery. I'm going to try and find, like, I want Carrie to have her slingshot, and I'll give her this one for the time being. But I'm going to try to find some other slingshot that I can use at this scale. Because she also, you see here, like, it fits into her hand better than Joker's dagger does. But you can see it's just a little too big for her. I don't know. I don't know. Actually, I think she's right-handed, so that's the wrong hand, that she should even be holding it over here. And, yeah. That one, it's kind of tough to get into her hand as well. But you see what I mean by the way the, I don't know what this part of the slingshot is called, but you see how that just, that's weird. And as with all McFarlane DC Multiverse figures, and we've seen in this wave, of course, she comes with her stand with the DC logo tampoed on the front. And finally, she has her card that this is a real good photo of the figure. This is a real dramatic photo of the figure. I really like this. And then if you want to know who she is, on the back here, we have her bio, how she kind of just decided she was going to be she just decided she was going to be Robin. You can even see right here, spending her lunch money to purchase a Robin suit. So I really like Carrie. I wish there was a way to fit her into the mainline continuity, but realistically, I know that's not going to happen. They've kind of done it, but it hasn't really been her. And finally, Carrie comes with the two pieces that make up the torso of the horse. You can see we got one right here, and we got one right here, a left and a right. So there's all of our horse pieces. All right, friends, here he is. Collect and build Batman's horse. Two things before we get started. First of all, I did think I was recording me assembling this thing, but I forgot to hit record, so here you have it, just completed. You didn't miss much. Second, let me just say that if he was going to put a collect-to-build figure with this line, this is kind of weird. uh, when I saw the collect-to-build was his horse, I was like, okay, but why? He only really used it on like 2 or 3 pages at the end of the series, the end of the trade paperback, whatever it is that you have. If he was going to do a collect-to-build figure with this line, truthfully, I feel like it should have been the mutant leader. But now that we have the horse out, let's put the tape measure to him and see how tall he stands. That to the top of his mane, right here, we're going right here to the top of his mane, the highest point, he is 9 inches tall. And from tip of the tail, from snoot to tail, he looks like he is about 13.5 inches long. So he's a pretty big horse, and he's going to have to be if he's going to be saddling up that chunky meat of a Batman that we got with this line. Okay, here we go. Batman's horse. I don't even think he has a name. And by the way, if you can hear that in the background, I apologize. The ice cream truck has chosen now to drive down the road. You can probably hear that. So, first of all, let me just say that the look of this horse, like I said with the saddle, the look of this horse is actually pretty good. How they even got black on black, black eyes on a black body to stand out, that the eyes have a shinier, glossier finish to them than the rest of the body. The tail is very weighty. Like, it articulates, but it doesn't really stay up very well on its own. I think the whole point of the articulation, like I said before, is when you get him into some rearing poses, you can use this as sort of a kickstand. So let's just take a look at the articulation first. His head can turn side to side. He also has some neck articulation that he can go down, he can go up. This is his standard pose. This part of the head at the top of the neck articulates a little up and down on its own. But really, whenever you part it like that and the mane separates, it looks kind of weird. So I'm probably going to be keeping it there for most of the time. His legs can articulate forward. There's some tight detents in there, but his legs will articulate forward. They'll go back. He has knee articulation, that the knees go forward way, way much. They don't come back nearly as far. He has a pivot at the knee, nothing here at the thigh, the hip, but you can see that it pivots at the knee. His legs, I feel like, are a little too close. I don't know. Well, maybe not. Now that I look at it, maybe that is about how far they're supposed to be. Ankles go way forward. For poses like that, ankles go back. And they have a little bit of, they have twist to them. Not so much rocker. I've never tried to review a quadruped before. At the hip, his legs will go forward. His legs will come back. And he has the dog leg knees right there. And he also has ankle swivel forward, backward, Nothing really side to side, just swiveling on their own. And then, like I said, the tail can do a full 360 spin. It can come up, but it doesn't really hold very well. And that's the articulation for our horse. Now, looking at the sculpt, like I said with the saddle, they actually did some really good detail with the saddle work. I was surprised on that. The rest of this sculpt, it's pretty much just a flat horse body. As a matter of fact, I won't be surprised if whenever we get Roach, Geralt's horse, I won't be surprised to find out that this is exactly the same body with just maybe a different headpiece. I would bet money on it that Roach and this horse are going to have the same body. The tail, like I showed you before, the tail is actually really well sculpted, really well detailed. Even has a little bit of a wash to make all the horsehair strands stand out. And we looked at the head before with the eyes shining out against the black coat and the detail in the bit and bridle as well. The legs are kind of impressive. We didn't really take a look at the legs, that you can sort of see muscles and sinews in there. I still feel like these legs might be a little too close together. And those are on right, like you can't swap them. That's how they're supposed to go on. So, and you have some detail and some muscle in his haunches here. But let's get to what everybody's waiting for, and let's see what Batman looks like on top of this guy. Oh, there he is. The Dark Knight detective on his horse. And I'm not going to lie, he looks a little ridiculous. He doesn't fit very well on it, to be completely honest. I know from this angle, from this view, it looks like he might fit on there pretty well, but I've discovered why this version of Batman was given thigh swivel when no other figure in McFarlane's line has it, and that's because you gotta swivel his knees out and make him bow-legged so that the legs will wrap around the horse, otherwise he doesn't get down in the saddle. And then you have to sort of stretch the stirrups and fit them around his feet. But as you can see through the gap, even with the bow leg, he doesn't fit all the way down on the saddle because the stirrups don't sit low enough. If you try and push him down, he's either going to stretch or rip the stirrups. So the stirrups are what's keeping him up off the saddle. So there's your horse, ladies and gentlemen. And just for fun, here's Geralt of Rivia on the horse in his wolf armor, and truthfully, he fits a little bit better. Well, let me get the stirrups in there better. Let me get him up there. There we go. Truthfully, he fits a little better than Batman does on the horse. It actually looks pretty good on there. And finally, one more shot with another figure. Here he is with Azrael, because Azrael is, after all, a knight. And he looks pretty good on there, too. Alright, now some quick size comparisons, because I realize this video has gone on way too long, but here is The Dark Knight Returns Batman and Superman alongside Detective Comics 1000 Batman and Action Comics 1000 Superman. The Dark Knight Returns Superman is definitely the tallest of the lot, but you can also see that The Dark Knight Returns Batman is even shorter than the Detective Comics 1000 Batman. I've been saying it from the beginning. I think this guy's just too short for the rest of this line. We'll see when we line them all up. And here's the Dark Knight Returns Joker with the Rebirth Joker, and I also have back Batman from Detective Comics 1000 and our Dark Knight Returns Batman, so that you can see these two match up fairly well, these match up fairly well, but once again, the Bat is shorter than Joker. And because I don't have any of the other Robin figures yet, here is Carrie Kelly Robin alongside Gotham Knights Red Hood. But I also brought out Zuko from McFarlane Toys' Avatar The Last Airbender line just to see how a 5-inch male figure of McFarlane's will scale along with this version of Robin. And this is giving me hope that that 5-inch Robin might work out with this line. Alright, and when it all comes down to it, here's the only scale that really matters, and that's how they scale with each other. And I don't mind Superman being the largest of the group, I really don't, and obviously Carrie is going to be the shortest of the group. But Batman, I don't know, man, he just seems too short for me. I know, like, right now he looks like, on the camera anyway, he looks like he's about the same height as Joker, but He's really not. Like, I don't know, Joker's just got a little bit of height on him, and I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't be that close. I feel like he should be closer in height to Clark. I just feel like this is a little screwed up with Batman. Maybe if they would have given him a neck. So I have two major frustrations with this line, and the first one of those is being, knowing McFarlane, this is more than likely the only line we're going to get, the only wave we're going to get from The Dark Knight Returns, which is very disappointing because there are so many other figures that he could bring out for this series. And I'm not even talking about the sequels. The sequels were awful. I'm just talking about The Dark Knight Returns. You still have the mutant leader. You still have the mutants. You still have Sons of the Batman. You still have a one-armed Ollie. You still have... You could bring out two versions of Two-Face for this. Selina, the Commissioner Gordon. Like, there are so many other figures, other people, so many other characters that you could bring out for this line, but I feel like these four are all we're going to get just because that seems like that's how McFarlane rolls. The other frustration about this is that after we had just gone over Red Hood, after we had just gone over some of the other McFarlane figures that had come out recently, the Witcher series, things like that, it really seemed like things were turning around, that the articulation was really starting to play into the figure's favor. These figures feel like they are taking a huge step backwards, that there is no uniformity between any of them, that the joints are very stiff, that even with all of these points of articulation, they still don't feel like they can really do anything because, other than Batman, they have no thigh swivel, they have no real ab crunch. Joker not having a bicep swivel, that's nuts to me too. Like, it just feels like this was one huge step backwards. It felt like a different team was working on each figure, and none of the teams were talking to each other about what direction they wanted to go with this line. I'm glad that we have a Dark Knight Returns series, and I am still looking forward to the Superman Armored Batman 2-pack that's coming out. Have it on pre-order at Big Bad Toy Store. These I got at my favorite place in the world that I know you've all heard me talking about before, Graydog Comics and Toys. I picked these up over the weekend, and I don't know. Like, I like them. I'm glad I have them. Love that I got Carrie Kelly Robin. The sculpts are very unique, especially in the face. Batman, I could have done without that grimace. I could have done with him having a neck. I know I've been harping on that, but that is just a huge annoyance to me. He could have done so much better with these, and it really feels like the more I looked at these, especially with like the pre-molded capes, the tie in an action pose, it just feels like he really just wants to go back to making statues sometimes. I don't know. That's just me. But believe it or not, after this, we still have a lot more McFarlane we're going to be taking a look at. I picked up some Warhammer for the first time. We're going to be taking a look at that. I also got some more Halo figures that we're going to be taking a look at. And believe it or not, we even have some Star Wars that we're going to look at on this channel. I know. Go figure. So until then, play well, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, thank you for watching.